Investigative lead last night didn't pan out, and FBI agents returned again to search Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood in Tucson. Thanks for joining us at 5. I'm Jared Dillingham.
And I'm Nicole Kreitz. Nancy Guthrie disappeared 11 days ago, and today CNN is reporting a new demand for Bitcoin in exchange for information on the kidnapper. We have live team coverage for you. Michaela Marshall's live outside Nancy Guthrie's home. First, we begin with true crime correspondent Briana Whitney at the Pima County Sheriff's Office with today's developments in the investigation.
Yeah, we know that there are thousands and thousands of tips coming in to both the FBI and here at PCSD, especially since they released that surveillance video and those pictures so crystal clear. People have wanted to jump in and help all over the country, but also here in Tucson. So we know that that's been happening. But the FBI also telling me that as for last night, we know that there was this person detained, released. They're not speaking on that, but they do confirm that they are still working off the notion that there are multiple persons of interest. And as for that ransom note that came in days ago, it had those 2 deadlines. The FBI had told us they believe those deadlines would help them to, determine whether or not this was legit, incredible or not. It's been several days since that last deadline, and at this hour, they have not been able to determine that. That ransom note still a major part of the investigation. So here's what we know about the investigative efforts from all sides tonight. PCSD says alone, they've received nearly 18,000 calls since February 1st, more than 4,000 of those in the last 24 hours since that surveillance video and the pictures were released. As far as the Bitcoin investigation goes, and Nicole, you mentioned it here earlier on the show, CNN is reporting another media outlet received a bizarre letter via email this morning from someone who claims to know who kidnapped Nancy Guthrie and is demanding a single Bitcoin in exchange for the information. Now, a single Bitcoin is worth about 66,000 US dollars. Keep in mind, there's already a $50,000 reward being offered for anyone who comes forward with a tip that leads to Nancy or an arrest. The FBI would not comment on that to me specifically, but did say despite both deadlines passing, that original ransom note still part of this overall investigation. And the FBI also told me on the phone today they're investigating, quote, tons of leads and still operating off Director Kash Patel's latest statement that there are multiple persons of interest. But of course, what everybody saw unfolding late last night, the big news, a man named Carlos was detained for questioning after a traffic stop in Rio Rico, that's south of Tucson here. His relative's home searched by law enforcement extensively. He said officers asked him about a kidnapping, which he claimed he knew nothing about. He was released overnight. So, with all these tips coming in, how do they even sort through them all for what is dire and what isn't? I asked a former FBI special agent. How do you prioritize what tips you look into first if they are time sensitive or not, given where we are in the investigation now?
So it is probably the most crucial aspect. There are a lot of crucial aspects, but one of the most crucial aspects of an investigation is complex and as famous as this one has become. Is it anonymous? Is it not anonymous? Does it talk about factual evidence that we know to be true from based on all of our other investigation? Maybe an item of clothing the suspect wore, maybe a vehicle that we know is suspicious. Is it linking a location that we already know to be significant to that tip? Are there things that indicate that this tip might be legitimate, or is it just somebody making something up? So you don't want to waste your resources on the irrelevant ones. You want to focus on the real ones, and that's really hard to do.
So interesting how they're basically triaging the tips that they come in to then determine what they're going to do from there. We know so many tips are coming in, so much so that people were actually showing up here to the PCSD to try to give them in person, because multiple people I've talked to have said they've had a really hard time getting through to these tip lines. One person said it took 5 to 6 times to submit their tip and actually talk to somebody on the phone, but this large volume of calls that these agencies are receiving is likely why. They still want your tips tonight, though, and that's so important now that we have that surveillance video, the person who was detained last night released. So there's obviously a lot more to go here. I think so many people, at least in the public, were under the impression that it was likely there would be some sort of press conference here today with PCSD, given the fact that the last 24 hours have been pretty wild, pretty chaotic with a lot of updates. But PCSD says they will only hold a press conference when there is a significant development in the case. We don't know exactly what they're considering significant, given the fact that we learned so much more in this case yesterday and then even into today. But of course, at this hour, with everything there and everything we've learned, we still have no idea where Nancy Guthrie is. Reporting live in Tucson tonight, Briana Whitney for Arizona's Family.